Welcome back to Accounting Information Systems, and today's topic is going to be on monitoring and auditing of AIS. I think that this is an exciting chapter because it brings all of our knowledge that we've acquired so far throughout the course and apply them into the world of auditing. So we are going to take our visualization skills, our ability to understand where data is structured inside of a system, the different business processes and cycles, and all of the data that it generates throughout the business cycles, and how we can ensure that we can test the internal controls that we place together. So let's get started, guys. What do you want to know about today's topic? Well, go ahead and give me your comments on the comment section below. Pause this video for a second. All right. Thank you for putting your comments. Let's move forward. Today, we're going to first take a look at what risks are involved with computer hardware and software. Specifically, we're going to focus on risks that are associated with Wi-Fi networks and other types of networks. So there are different security threats in accounting information systems, and most of them originate from our ability to operate on the internet, online. If you think about our Wi-Fi infrastructure or our internet infrastructure, it is just simply a big highway of information, and that highway is open to everybody to see. We use open roads. Sometimes we use tunneling, but most of the time we are using information that is traveling publicly. It just happens to be encrypted, but anybody can capture it. So anybody that can decrypt that information can actually listen to it. So one of the first types of attacks that are most commonly used is the eavesdropping attack, and that involves a passive listener that monitors wireless networks for data or any other type of network, including authentication credentials. So if you're able to listen and capture your authentication credentials, then they can do a lot of damage. The man in the middle, or person in the middle attack, is a type of attack that involves an attacker actively intercepting communication between wireless clients and access points to obtain authentication credentials and data. So what it does is it actually captures that, and they can turn around and modify that and do a different thing. They're very similar in terms. Now, the masquerading involves somebody impersonating an authorized user so that they can gain access to any type of system, either through an authorized privilege or wireless network. So masquerading is a type of attack in which an attacker impersonates an authorized user and gains an authorized privilege to a system or a wireless network. By masquerading, you can go in and take advantage of anybody's identity. Now, given the fact that all internet packets are traveling in a public way, it is possible that somebody could intercept that packet, not just listen to it, but actually modify it. So imagine if you had a request for a bunch of diamonds, and then I was able to hack the internet and change the address of that order to be delivered to Fernando Parra's home address. That would be amazing. Or if I could just, somebody could post, as I was posting grades, somebody could then turn around and capture that grade and switch it to the best grade you wanted to get. So that is what message modification is all about. It could also involve the modification of messages, of emails, etc. They're not just emails and communications. They can also be communications that occur internally between systems to operate a system. So you also have what we call message replay, that involves not the modification of a message, but the recording and then replaying over and over. So if I were to record the verbal password that you use, but I couldn't pronounce it somehow, but I would play so it would match your voice, then I may be able to get access to a particular system. That could be the same with data. I could record the data that you're sending, such as a password, and then I would be able to replay it later on if the session management of that system is not properly secured. Misappropriation is another type of attack that basically lets somebody steal or make unauthorized use of a service is just misappropriating services without much effort. There are also other types of attacks that involve traffic analysis. By simply understanding where the data in an organization is coming from, that you might be able to understand where your server is at, and you could physically locate it or digitally locate it. So having an analysis of traffic identifies patterns of use, etc., that can be very useful to somebody who's planning an attack on that particular facility. It's kind of like your surveillance before you do the big heist. All right, and finally, you can also have rogue access points, and those are access points that are set up by individuals that want to pretend they're part of a Wi-Fi system. So imagine being at an airport and then logging in, and you think you're logging into an airport, but instead you're logging into somebody's wonderful system that just steals everything that you type in an unencrypted manner. That's what a rogue access point is all about. So all of these security threats mandate the use of security controls that are either on a management level, or an application level, or an operational level. So let's talk about the management controls. Management controls are those controls that are implemented to manage the risk and the information system security. They include, but are not limited to, assigning roles and responsibilities to different individuals, creating policies and procedures that you're supposed to follow, such as how do you open an account, which password, what type of password is required for this account. Well, that's actually not a security control, but actually defining that somebody must use a password and they must change it every 3 months. And when they leave work, they have to terminate that account. So that is a type of security control that you would put, and we call that a management control. Conducting a risk assessment on a regular basis is another type of management control that is using a framework such as COSO, which we just covered. All right. Now, operational controls also protect the firm's premise and facilities, and they prevent and detect physical security breaches. And they normally involve providing training to employees, contractors, or third parties, making sure that you are defining and documenting those security roles, producing terms and conditions of employment so that all of your operations are standardized and that everybody understands their role, and actually conducting appropriate awareness training and on wireless networks or your systems or your accounting information systems. So those are all security controls that are operational in nature. And then finally, you have security controls that are technical in nature, that are primarily implemented and executed through mechanisms contained in computer-related equipment. So what does that mean? It means that you just think of your computer system and every single type of security protocol that it has. You know, how do you log in? It has all the encryption methodology. The fact that your hard drive is most likely encrypted so that if somebody finds that, you can lock it and then wipe the data out of that. Again, all those security controls can be implemented already internally in the software applications or the operating systems that you use, whether they're devices that are mobile or actual access points that are meant to be encrypted for data integrity purposes. Now let's take a look at a particular policy that's created by an organization that publishes best practices. Now this is a password protection policy. This password protection policy gives you all the elements that you really have to have. So as an accountant, why is this important? Well, you will be auditing and testing that individuals or companies have the right policies and procedures in place, the right information security management systems to make sure that people follow these controls. So these, again, serve as controls that should be implemented widely and effectively. And if you don't have a system of policy creation, then how do people know what they're supposed to do? And this is a typical example that follows great practices. Let me give you an example of a policy on password creation. Well, one of those is that all user level and system level passwords should conform to the password construction guidelines. Again, this is another policy that will determine if you're supposed to have 8 characters or 12 characters, if you're supposed to have special characters, capital letters, lowercase letters, etc. Another one would be that users must use a separate unique passwords for each of their work-related accounts, and you're not allowed to have one single password for everything. Another one would be that everybody would have to use a sign-on, et cetera, et cetera. Again, all of these policies are typical best practices that are used by businesses, and they're published by SAN. So one of the things that I would do as an auditor is go back and make sure that all of these policies and procedures that are recommended by the experts are being followed by your organization. Just as simple as that. You can always find this at sans.org, right? Sans.org is a organization that's a nonprofit that is dedicated once again to providing all sorts of information and templates for organizations that are focused on providing information security. All right, let's go back to what is our understanding of computer-assisted auditing techniques. Well, let's go ahead and define that. So computer-assisted audit techniques are simply a set of techniques that you can use so that you can perform auditing functions with computerized equipment. As simple as that. Wow, it sounds so sophisticated. In order to do that, you have to follow generally accepted auditing standards, which are broad guidelines regarding an auditor's professional responsibilities. And these standards also include the ability, right, to make sure that you're using computer-assisted technology-based audit tools in order to be more effective at your job. In fact, the IIA, or the Internal Auditor's Professional Practice Standard, requires you to make sure that you understand CATs or any type of software that helps you automate some of those audits as you perform in the future. So by the time you graduate, if you want to be an internal auditor or an auditor, you have to have the proper knowledge and use of all of these software packets. ITSACA, which is the Information Systems Audits and Controls, has also information systems auditing standards that can provide you guidelines on how to conduct an IS or an IT audit. The use of CATs in auditing system helps you test for details of transactions and balances. It lets you know if something has a gap, if something was not properly balanced, if it doesn't match the bank. It also lets you review analytical procedures, right? So what does that mean? So you can look at a procedure and see if it was being followed by the transactions, which happened first, which happened second, was this properly authorized, etc. You can also check for compliance of tests of IT general and application controls. Is the password creation really working? Well, let's go and check. Is the user following the right policy? Was this posted at the right time as our policy dictates? Are we supposed to not work on Sundays? So why do we have transactions on Sundays? All of these are types of auditing techniques that can be used very quickly with a CAT or IDEA that we will be covering today, by the way. So this is very exciting to me. You can tell that I'm a little overexcited this morning. All right. We also can do vulnerability assessments of your operating systems and networks. You can look at the source code of your software to see if anybody has injected any type of malicious code. You can do penetration testing, etc., etc. All of these are, again, CATs that can help us in the auditing world. And there's two approaches. One of them is going to be your computer black box approach or the white box approach. Let's take a look at the black box approach. Like the name suggests, the black box approach is a type of technique that allows you to calculate or test the system by simply providing inputs and then comparing the outputs to what you would expect the output to be. So think about saying, well, let me see if this calculator works. I'm going to plug in 1 plus 1, and if you get a 3, then you know you have a problem. Otherwise, if you get a 2, you may think that it doesn't have a problem, and you keep testing. Well, what about 2 plus 3? What about 5 plus 5? What if I start putting all these transactions on the system? Shouldn't I get this type of financial statement? Why am I getting a different financial statement? And that's how you test a system using the black box approach. Now, the advantage of this is that your systems will not be interrupted. So by doing this, you're not opening the system. You don't need to be sophisticated in using technology. You just have to understand the accounting principles and to realize what the numbers should look like. On the other hand, the white box approach actually allows an auditor to open the internal logic of a system and actually look at the way you aggregate stuff. So you would be able to go in, and I think you're almost ready for this. You would be ready to go in and say, well, show me the reports that generate your financial statement of activity for this month. And then you would be able to see if the queries, oh my God, such a big word, queries, and the functions that you applied are actually the right ones. Because guess what? You've done that with Access, you've done that with Tableau, you've done that with all this. You're going to do this with IDEA. And this is going to be basically operated the same way no matter what system you use. Even if you go to an SAP system or an Oracle system, the principles are going to be the same. You're going to have data that will be queried based on parameters, and those parameters are supposed to match the production of statements or aggregations that will be fulfilling the requirements of a financial statement. And you should be able to compare those and see, okay, these were prepared properly because they used the right type of filters. And that's basically it. You can also have controls that you can generate by manually testing the data and then seeing if those aggregates actually match your control figures, such as we've been doing so far and will continue to do with our IDEA assignment today. All right. So what are some of the different ways that you can apply the white box approach? Well, first, you can test data by simply using input data to validate a system integrity, right? So you can go in there, test the data, see if it actually does what it's supposed to do, and see the internal mechanisms. You can also simulate an entire process, and we call this the parallel simulation, where you would try to simulate a firm's key feature or process and then watch it go through the system as well. Not just a transaction or input, but an entire process. Now, a more sophisticated approach would be to have an integrated test facility where you ship all of your data that is being processed every day, and then you put it in this room or in this server box, and then you apply automated techniques that are constantly going in there and reviewing, whether you do it on an ongoing basis or on a periodic basis. You can go in and use that data from a data warehouse. The most effective types of audits, though, that are continuous and that use automated systems have embedded audit modules within the system that you already use. So think of QuickBooks and the ability to provide you auditing tools that you would need to make sure that anybody that made an adjustment did it correctly. So this is what we have in software that is more sophisticated. ERP systems such as SAP, Oracle, financials, and others have modules that can be bought that will act pretty much like the way IDEA or ACL works, by providing visualization, extraction, algorithms that will be used for auditing purposes. And we'll get to see what that means when we do our hands-on exercise in a few moments. All right. Finally, generalized audit software are the tools that are going to use those techniques to provide you with the ability to audit a system. They normally use substantive tests, and they are used to test the controls through transactional data analysis. So if I am trying to see if a particular control is working, then I look at the data that was yielded from the operations, and then I would know if this is actually being generated or if the controls are working. Now, you can directly read and access data from various database platforms using generalized audit software. So rather than having an embedded module, you can have software that specializes on extracting and analyzing, visualizing, and aggregating data so you can perform your audits. So once again, the generalized audit software provides auditors with an independent means to gain access to data for analysis and the ability to use high-level problem-solving software to invoke functions to be performed on data files. What are those types of software, and what are we referring to? We're referring to the audit control language, which is ACL software packets, or the IDEA that we're going to be covering today, the interactive data extraction and analysis software. All right, so let's take a look at what IDEA does.
Whether you're an auditor, accountant, or finance professional, your work is all about data, gathering it, consolidating it, and analyzing it. Discovering a trend, pattern, outlier, or anomaly buried within your data can be a time-consuming process, especially when that data is contained in different formats and sources. Idea 10 data analysis software from Caseware Analytics can help. Idea 10 accelerates your audit by giving you access to a number of easy-to-use tools, tasks, and features. Now you can meet all of your data analytics needs and analyze 100% of your data with 100% confidence with just a few quick clicks. Idea is designed for auditors, accountants, and other finance professionals to help them analyze data faster, identify control breakdowns, and improve their audits. Idea enables you to effortlessly import an infinite number of records from virtually any source and any file type. Idea protects the source data by allowing read-only access to your client's data to avoid accidental errors or unwanted changes to maintain data integrity. The fuzzy duplicate tool is now more powerful than ever with the ability to detect data entry errors, multiple data conventions for reporting information, and fraud. Many of the tasks in Idea match the analysis you would need to perform in your audit. For example, easily find missing invoices, identify duplicate checks, and highlight accounts not matching predictions. The Project Overview feature helps you stay on top of your audit by graphically presenting all of the tasks completed within your project. Project Overview creates an audit trail so accurate and reliable that it will stand up in a court of law. Idea includes Benford's Law Analysis, which automatically compiles a database that you can analyze to identify suspicious transactions, potential fraud, or other irregularities. Idea 10 introduces data visualization, the next evolution in data analysis. This feature enables you to immediately know your data and discover what lies within. With just a few easy clicks, you can create charts and field statistics to profile your data, enabling you to quickly pinpoint patterns, trends, outliers, and correlations in your data that may have gone unnoticed in a table. The data visualization feature offers two primary tasks: discover and visualize. If you're not familiar with the data, the discover task lets Idea do the work for you and shows you the data. In just a few clicks, trends, patterns, and outliers are identified and presented in a dashboard, saving you the trouble of manually analyzing your data. If you know your data and what you want to do with it, the Visualize task puts Idea to work under your direction. You can build a visual dashboard from the ground up that will help you interpret and monitor data trends in a single or multiple databases. Insights are presented to you as visuals, so you can quickly see areas that need further investigation. Visualize can also auto-stratify your data for you, taking your data analysis to the next level. And the Idea Passport is your gateway to maximizing Idea for your auditing projects. Idea 10 focuses your audit by delivering simplified and user-friendly data analytics that help uncover insights into your data with just a few easy clicks. Whether you're familiar with the data or it is presented new to you, deliver insights, make recommendations to your stakeholders, and gain the respect you deserve. Try Idea 10 today.
Wonderful. I think this is going to help us understand what we're about to see with Idea. Are you excited yet? Are you excited? All right, so let's go ahead and finalize this lecture by explaining the continuous auditing and accounting information systems. So very briefly, I want to make sure that we understand that what is continuous auditing? Well, continuous auditing is the ability to perform audit-related activities on a continuous basis in which you are testing for the effectiveness of your continuous controls that you've implemented before. In this continuous audit, technology plays a key role in being able to analyze trends and patterns of transactions, the identification of exceptions and anomalies, and the testing of controls. So, what does this include? In a continuous auditing, you're able to do anything from continuous control assessment to continuous risk assessment. So you have different approaches. One will be based on testing the controls that are being implemented and to analyze if they're being effective or not, or to understand the risks that are affecting your business and whether they are affecting the business at all. Now, you can have an approach that is looking at real-time detailed transaction testing of financial data, or looking at comparisons and trends of accumulated data that has been accumulated for some time. And some of the related audit activities include your control assurance, your financial attestation, fraud, waste, and abuse detection, the actual scoping of audits, your audit scoping, your objectives, the follow-up on any type of audit requirements, and finally, your annual audit planning that must be engaged on your continuous auditing. And this all relates to management activities such as control monitoring, performance monitoring, total quality management, and enterprise risk management. All right, so what are the benefits of continuous auditing? Well, for most firms, continuous auditing can reduce errors and fraud. It can increase operational effectiveness. It can help you better comply with laws and regulations. And more importantly, it can actually increase management confidence in the effectiveness of the controls that you put in place and your financial information. Continuous auditing allows internal and external auditors to either monitor transaction data in a timely manner or better understand critical control points, rules, and exceptions as you perform risk assessments and control assessments in a real time or almost in a real time. This also allows internal auditors to notify management of any type of deficiency that's identified in a much faster way. You no longer have to wait a whole year, a whole 6 months before you go to the next audit. You are able to make a difference as an internal auditor, not just to write somebody up, but to actually help the organization stop this from occurring or prevent this from happening again. Then this is how an internal auditor can add more and more value. And again, this also reduces the efforts on routine testing while focusing on more valuable investigating activities. Because when you have that, when you have continuous auditing, you're looking at all the data and then you're just matching by exception. In this case, auditing by exception. You would see what type of transactions do not fit the normal pattern, and then at that point you can then effectively go in and investigate a little further, applying professional skepticism required for our CPAs. All right, so in order to implement continuous auditing, you have to make sure that all the stuff that we learned so far, your database management system, your XBRL, your XML, your query tools, and your data warehouses are combined so that you can come up with data mining or computer assisting auditing techniques. And you'll see how that translates to once you do IDEA in a few minutes. All right, so what are some of the barriers that are non-technical and technical in the implementation of continuous auditing? Well, it's not just as simple as let's go ahead and implement this and all of a sudden, voila, you have total detection of fraud. No, there's always some perceived negative impact of continuous auditing on the firm. Who wants to be continuously looked at? You know, what if I put a camera behind you and say, I'm auditing you the whole time? Well, not everybody likes to have the auditing team be breathing over their backs. And so there's always some negative connotation of saying, oh, you want to be watching me all the time. And there's also a question of what do you want to prioritize first in your implementation of your auditing approach? Do you focus on accounts receivables, on valuation or validation, on gap analysis, on detection of vendors that are not authorized? So all of these things have very different impacts, and it is a difficult exercise to do, but it has to be done in combination with your organization's appetite for risk. If you set that at the very top and you make sure that your enterprise risk management is done at a strategic level, then you can come back and say, well, if that is my strategy, then I should make sure that the following areas are properly controlled for. Finally, not everybody in the internal audit group has the ability to develop and adopt continuous auditing. It requires much more knowledge of systems and techniques, and not everybody is used to that. So you will probably graduate, and depending where you work, you'll have continuous auditing with wonderful tools, or you may be doing stuff on paper and Excel. Nothing wrong with that. But you will see the power of IDEA, again, just in a few minutes. I keep building up the hype. Now, you also have unrealistic expectations of the benefits of continuous auditing. Sometimes it's not everything that you thought it would be, because it just simply does not give you a foolproof or a fraud-proof system. It simply allows you to detect. But when somebody wants to steal or defraud someone, sometimes they're just really good at it, right? And so it's difficult for us to be able to use this as a tool all the time. Now, in terms of technical challenges, well, there's plenty of technical challenges with continuous auditing. One of them is to make sure that all the relevant data is obtained in a timely manner. And that depends on how connected your extracts are. And it's difficult to extract. You're going to see how tedious it can be. So you might want to have a process that is automated, that is constantly spitting out reports that are constantly being imported. And guess what? IDEA has automation tools on their own. They have macros just like Excel does. Now, it is also difficult to accumulate and quantify the risks and the exposures that have been identified. You may have an actual transaction that is an error, and then you may try to extrapolate that into an assertion that somebody has committed fraud. So or whether that is a typical thing that happens. So it's always difficult from just a few transactions to understand how everything is going to be affected in terms of your exposure. Another thing that we hope to accomplish with today's assignment is to help you define the appropriate analytical tool that you'll use to identify exceptions to controls. So if you're testing that every transaction in your financial statement is properly cut off, well, what is the right tool that you would use on IDEA to test for that? And so sometimes that can be difficult to understand, and it only helps if you practice more and more and more. So what if you were trying to identify the completeness of your accounts, or your revenues? Well, then you want to make sure that you have a gap detection to begin with. And so all of those things are going to be very specifically outlined in a very nice format in our 100 or 200 page workbook that will be covering the IDEA software project. And I think you should be enjoying this. I think that as auditors, you or as accountants, you'll understand the value of understanding this tool. And let me tell you, the next time you go to an interview, you will be able to say, I can use IDEA software. So if PwC has its own software to assurances, then guess what? It's just a matter of translating that into a slightly different language, but the tests that are available are pretty much the same. Your gap detection, your statistical trends, your statistical analysis of distribution of transactions, the actual amount parameters, understanding any type of aggregation or union of different tables to understand if something is missing, etc., etc., etc. You'll hear all about it in a few minutes. All right, so finally, a couple of other technical challenges will include developing a suitable scoring or weighting mechanism to prioritize exceptions. Once you find them, how do you prioritize which ones are the ones that you're supposed to follow up with? And finally, making sure that you're balancing the costs and efforts of reviewing large volumes of exceptions should be always measured against the exposures of the exceptions themselves. Like, am I going to spend so much time in finding if somebody was 3 minutes late to their posting of a journal transaction, or am I more interested in making sure that the vendors that are in my system are actually validated vendors with proper 1099s? Well, that may be a little more important than just seeing the timeliness of some of the data. Again, this is all based on the audit scope that is going to be generated and defined by your audit committee, whether it is an internal auditing committee or an external one. And finally, just remember that your steering team or the internal audit function can use 5 different continuous auditing steps. Number 1 is to make sure that you're evaluating the overall benefit and cost of your strategy. You develop a strategy, you plan and design how you're going to implement it, and then you actually implement the continuous auditing. And more importantly than anything else, just like the COSO framework dictates, you want to make sure you monitor how good is your continuous auditing, because it can always be fooled. So you got to go test it and make sure that your tests and your statistical analysis are actually being effective at detecting any type of non-compliance with your controls or detecting any risks. And that's basically all I have for you guys for today. This is an exciting chapter once again. I'm wishing you the best. Stay safe, and we will be resuming back as soon as you're done with that idea. So call me on my phone. Meet me on Friday for happy hour. If you have any questions, or during my office hours, I'll be happy to help. Thank you guys. It was nice seeing you today in person. Take care.